Hey everyone, Father Christopher here again, just talking more in depth about Holy Thursday, the evening Mass of the Lord's Supper. So what we're going to do is just do a short reading once again. This can be for the adults and the kids together, but then have a short time just to talk about what is taking place here. So the evening Mass of the Lord's Supper ushers in the Paschal Triduum, which we talked about in the previous lesson. It begins after sundown, as did the Passover meal celebrated by Jesus. This service is second only to the Easter Vigil in the importance in the church year. Get that? Second only to the Passover, second only to the Easter Vigil. That means that both of these are even higher than Christmas, or the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Isn't that crazy? But that's how important these are. On this night, we celebrate the institution of the Eucharist, when Jesus gave his apostles his body and blood in anticipation of his death on the cross the next day. In this action, Jesus showed his friends how he would win salvation for the entire world, and how he would continue to offer the graces he won on the cross to all people, for all generations. This celebration was the very first Mass. So if you ever wondered, when did Jesus do his very first Mass? It was on Holy Thursday, the Last Supper. In that moment, it was a combination. It was both the Passover, which was the rite that the Jews celebrated, which we talked about in the classes on the Eucharist, but then also it was a new celebration. It was the very first Mass that has ever taken place. And in that moment, Jesus says, "Do this in remembrance of me." So they continued afterwards. At the Last Supper, Jesus instituted not only the Holy Eucharist, but also the sacrament of Holy Orders, when he commanded his apostles, "Do this in remembrance of me." Jesus gave these men the power to continue to represent the same sacrifice every time Mass is celebrated. The apostles thus became the first priests. So on the day of Holy Thursday, I actually celebrate my priesthood, because it's the day that, in a sense, Jesus started the priesthood for all men. It's an incredible thing. And just as I try to renew my vows every single day, remembering what I've been called to do, we're also called to do the same and remember the gift that Christ gave us in giving us the priesthood. Now, during the evening Mass of the Lord's Supper, we also see the worth that Jesus gave to humble service and need to be washed with water, as we witness the mandatum, or the washing of feet. So Jesus got down on his hands and knees and put on a towel and washed the feet of his disciples. In the account of the Last Supper in John chapter 13, verses 5 through 15, we see how important it was for Jesus to communicate to his disciples and his apostles the need to serve one another in humility. "If I, therefore, the master and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash one another's feet." This message was intended not only for the apostles gathered in that room, but for all who desire to follow Jesus. Humble service is the hallmark of being a Christian. As I mentioned yesterday, if you want to be truly great, it's not done by money or by power or by fame or prestige or by ruling the world. No, it's in service. That is how we find greatness. When we look at all of the saints that the church has ever produced, every single one of them had the same thing in mind. They loved as Christ loves. They served. Now we see in the washing of the feet great symbolism for the need of baptism. Jesus said to Peter, "Unless I wash you, you have no inheritance with me." We must be born again in baptism if we want to share in Christ's salvation. Washing with water implies cleansing, which is where the traditional name for this Maundy Thursday comes from. We see this cleansing also symbolized during the liturgy and the stripping of the altar, and its washing with water. On Holy Thursday, the Church consecrates many hosts to meet the need of all present at the Mass for the Lord's Supper, as well as to distribute to all those who will attend services on Good Friday, when no Mass will be celebrated. This night, the Mass ends in silence and with the procession of the Blessed Sacrament to its place of repose. Everyone is invited to spend time in prayer of the Blessed Sacrament after Mass and into the night. This reminds us of how the disciples stayed and prayed with Jesus during his agony in the garden. When adoration is over, the Blessed Sacrament is reposed in a place where it will stay until communion is distributed on Good Friday. This night, we remember that Jesus submitted himself entirely to his Father's plan as he prayed. "Not my will, but yours be done." As one leaves the church, if the Blessed Sacrament is still exposed, it is proper to genuflect on both knees with a bow before the Blessed Sacrament. So, this all happened last night at Holy Thursday. I meant to get these videos out earlier, but this all happened last night, and it was an incredible celebration of God's love for us, because he showed us how much he cares. So, we'll continue on with another lesson very soon, but have a blessed Triduum and continue to enjoy these most holy days of the year.